The air inside Lester and Hunt Fine Jewelry was thick with the quiet hum of exclusivity. Soft classical music floated through the showroom, weaving between the glass cases where diamonds, emeralds, and sapphires gleamed under carefully placed spotlights. The scent of polished wood and expensive cologne created an invisible barrier, an unspoken rule: this was not a place for the ordinary. Then, the door chimed. Heads barely turned at first. Just another potential buyer, another wealthy client looking to add to their collection. But then, a pause. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the room's energy. A hesitation in the way the sales associates moved. She didn't fit. Patricia Taylor stepped forward with a measured grace, her simple floral dress swaying slightly as she entered. Her shoes, though well-maintained, showed signs of age, and her purse, a modest leather bag, had seen better days. There was no Rolex on her wrist, no diamond necklace adorning her neck. And yet, there was something about her. A quiet confidence. A presence. Across the showroom, Michael Edwards, the store's senior salesman, took immediate notice. With years of experience catering to the elite, he had developed an unerring instinct for identifying real clients. One look at Patricia, and he had already made his assessment. She was not one of them. Still, appearances had to be kept. With the practiced ease of a man who had mastered the art of polite dismissal, he straightened his tie and approached with a carefully measured smile. "Good afternoon, ma'am. May I help you?" The pause before the last two words was intentional. A slight hesitation, just enough to suggest that her presence here was, at best, unexpected. At worst, unwelcome. Patricia met his gaze, unwavering. "I'd like to see your sapphire collection." Michael barely contained the flicker of amusement in his eyes. Sapphire? He doubted she could afford a sterling silver bracelet, let alone the exquisite blue stones locked behind glass. But years in high-end sales had taught him the art of subtle condescension. "Sapphire," he repeated, feigning surprise. "Of course. Right this way." As he led her to the display case, his mind was already crafting an exit strategy. A way to steer this conversation to its inevitable conclusion, her walking out, empty-handed, with the lingering embarrassment of realizing she never should have set foot inside in the first place. Little did he know, in just a matter of minutes, he would be the one regretting everything. Michael's polished shoes clicked against the marble floor as he led Patricia toward the sapphire display, his posture stiff, his expression barely masking his impatience. The glass case gleamed under the soft golden lighting, its contents carefully arranged, deep blue stones set in platinum, each piece a masterpiece of craftsmanship. With an almost theatrical flourish, he unlocked the case and withdrew a pair of sapphire earrings, their facets catching the light in a mesmerizing dance. Holding them between two fingers, he placed them on a velvet tray before sliding it toward her. "These are handcrafted, 18-karat white gold, each sapphire sourced from Sri Lanka. Exceptional quality. And, of course, exceptionally priced." His voice held a knowing lilt, the kind used to gently deter those who didn't belong. Patricia reached out, fingers steady as she picked up one of the earrings. She turned it over, examining the details, the cut, the setting. "The craftsmanship is exquisite," she murmured, her voice filled with genuine appreciation. Michael's lips twitched, suppressing a smirk. "Yes, well, exceptional craftsmanship comes with an exceptional price." He crossed his arms, Rolex peeking from under his tailored cuff. "These are $30,000. He let the words hang between them, giving them weight, waiting for the inevitable widening of her eyes, the quick retreat, the polite excuse before she shuffled out the door. But Patricia didn't react the way he expected. Instead, she simply nodded. "That seems fair." Michael blinked. He had anticipated discomfort, hesitation, anything but calm agreement. He leaned forward slightly, his tone taking on an edge of forced patience. "Ma'am, these pieces aren't exactly meant for casual handling. They're exclusive. His gaze flickered to her simple dress, her worn purse, a silent but deliberate insult. Perhaps I can show you something more, suitable for your circumstances. Across the room, a few customers glanced over, sensing the shift in energy. A younger salesman, Jake, had been watching from a distance, his brows drawing together as he caught the condescending way Michael spoke. Patricia placed the earring back onto the tray with deliberate care. I'd still like to try them on properly. A flash of irritation crossed Michael's face before he forced another smile. I'm afraid I must be direct since you seem to be missing the rather obvious cues. He exhaled sharply, as if explaining something painfully simple. These earrings cost $30,000. That's more than your entire wardrobe, handbag, and likely your monthly Social Security check combined. The words, though spoken smoothly, carried a sharpened cruelty. A few murmurs rippled through the store. A well-dressed older gentleman by the diamond collection turned, his frown deepening as he observed the exchange. A woman near the entrance subtly tightened her grip on her designer handbag. Jake, unable to stay silent, cleared his throat and took a step forward, but Michael shot him a warning look, daring him to interfere. Patricia, however, remained unshaken. The price isn't the issue. Michael let out a quiet, mirthless chuckle. It's not just about the price, ma'am. He gestured vaguely at the gleaming showroom, at the affluent clientele who draped themselves in luxury as effortlessly as breathing. It's about understanding one's place. Patricia tilted her head slightly, her eyes meeting his with an unsettling steadiness. Michael's expression hardened. He had entertained this long enough. Tell me, he said, his voice dropping lower, laced with mockery, where exactly were you planning to wear these? What do they call them, senior center luncheon? A church raffle? His gaze swept over her again, scanning her floral dress as if it were offensive to the very air of the boutique. A slow silence settled over the room. Jake looked away, jaw tight. The elderly man by the diamonds let out a disapproving noise, but still, no one spoke. Patricia, poised and unaffected, simply exhaled. Young man, Michael cut her off, lifting a hand dismissively. Please. Let's not turn this into a scene. He picked up the earrings, sliding them back into their case with exaggerated care. The exit is right behind you. His smile was thin, razor-edged. And next time, stick to window shopping. It's free and doesn't waste anyone's valuable time. Then, just as the last word left his mouth, the deep, unmistakable rumble of a motorcycle engine cut through the hushed tension like a blade. The sound reverberated off the marble floor, a growling presence that didn't belong in a place of delicate refinement. The store's security system buzzed as the doors swung open, and for the first time, Michael's carefully constructed composure cracked. The low, throaty growl of the motorcycle filled the silence, an intruder in the pristine luxury of Lester and Hunt. Heads turned, startled by the sudden disruption, eyes darting toward the entrance as the heavy glass doors swung open. The scent of leather and the crisp bite of cool air rushed in, cutting through the carefully controlled atmosphere of polished opulence. A tall figure stepped inside, removing his helmet with practiced ease. Dark hair fell slightly tousled, sharp features shadowed by the soft glow of showroom lights. His leather jacket creaked as he shifted, scanning the room with an easy, unaffected confidence. Michael's breath hitched. He knew that face. Keanu Reeves. The recognition hit him like a gut punch, his stomach tightening as if the very air had been knocked from his lungs. The same professional smile he had withheld from Patricia now stretched across his face like a reflex, desperate and immediate. Mr. Reeves. Michael nearly stumbled over his own feet as he stepped forward, his entire demeanor shifting in an instant. What an unexpected honor. Welcome to Lester and Hunt. I would be delighted to personally assist you. But Keanu wasn't looking at him. His gaze had already locked onto Patricia, and in an instant, the entire store watched as something shifted in the air between them. The smile that broke across his face wasn't the polite, restrained expression of a celebrity greeting a fan. It was warmth. Recognition. Love. Mom. The single word echoed like a hammer striking glass, shattering the fragile illusion of superiority that Michael had built just moments ago. Patricia smiled, entirely unfazed by the weight of the moment. "Sorry I'm late," Keanu continued, closing the distance between them in just a few strides, wrapping her in a familiar, protective embrace. Fifth Avenue traffic was brutal. Silence rippled through the store, thick and electric. The blood drained from Michael's face so fast that for a second he swayed, gripping the edge of the display case to steady himself. His mind scrambled, desperate to backtrack, to salvage what was left of his sinking dignity, but words failed him. The wealthy couple who had politely ignored the earlier exchange now stood frozen, eyes darting between Michael and Patricia like they had just witnessed a slow-motion disaster. The older gentleman who had watched with quiet disapproval exhaled sharply, shaking his head. Michael opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Keanu turned, his expression still calm, but his eyes, the eyes that had charmed audiences across the world, the eyes that had seen more than most could imagine, hardened just enough to make Michael instinctively take a step back. Was he? Keanu's voice was low, steady, but it carried weight. He didn't look at Michael directly yet. He didn't need to. The entire store was already waiting for the answer. Patricia, always composed, simply lifted her chin. "He was just explaining to me about knowing one's place." The words, spoken so softly, landed with the force of a wrecking ball. A muscle in Keanu's jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffening just enough to betray the control in his posture. He turned fully now, facing Michael, who had gone stiff as a mannequin, his mouth opening and closing uselessly. I had no idea," Michael stammered. "If I had known." "That's the problem, isn't it?" Keanu interrupted, his voice never rising, never needing to. "You didn't know." Michael flinched. "You didn't know she designed costumes for some of Hollywood's biggest films. You didn't know she raised me alone, teaching me the value of treating everyone with dignity. You didn't know anything about her." Keanu let the words hang in the air before delivering the final blow. "But you decided she didn't belong here." The weight of the accusation was suffocating. Michael shrank under the scrutiny, his expensive suit suddenly feeling too tight, his once confident posture reduced to something small, something insignificant. Jake, standing near the counter, let out a slow breath. His hands tightened into fists at his sides, not in anger, but in restrained satisfaction. A young saleswoman near the entrance swallowed hard, looking down at the bracelet she had been adjusting, as if suddenly ashamed of the world she had aligned herself with. Michael's hands twitched, as if grasping at invisible lifelines, but Keanu wasn't waiting for an apology. He turned back to his mother, his expression softening immediately. "You still want to look at the sapphires, Mom?" Patricia chuckled, shaking her head. "Actually, dear, I think I've seen enough jewelry for today." Keanu smiled, understanding her completely. "Coffee, then?" Patricia's eyes twinkled. "Do they still make those lemon scones I like? Let's go find out." As they turned to leave, Keanu paused at the threshold, glancing back only once. Michael stood frozen, unable to meet his gaze. And then, with a single nod, as if silently sealing Michael's fate, Keanu Reeves stepped outside with his mother, leaving behind the lingering echo of a lesson that would not soon be forgotten. The doors swung shut behind them, the faint hum of the motorcycle's engine fading into the bustling city outside. But inside Lester and Hunt, the silence was deafening. Michael still stood frozen, his hands gripping the glass display case so tightly his knuckles had gone white. The weight of a dozen eyes pressed against him, judgment heavy in the air. The wealthy couple who had been pretending not to watch suddenly found their jewelry choices less interesting. The older gentleman by the diamonds let out a long, disappointed sigh, shaking his head as he turned away. A quiet scoff came from behind the counter. "Jake." Michael turned sharply, his face twisted with a mix of humiliation and misplaced anger. "What?" he snapped, voice low but sharp. Jake simply tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Nothing," he said, voice casual, almost too casual. He wiped down the counter with slow, deliberate strokes, his posture loose, unaffected. "That was just educational." Michael's stomach twisted. He could hear it now, the whispers, the murmurs spreading through the store like wildfire. The realization that in just a few minutes, his carefully cultivated image of authority and exclusivity had crumbled into dust. "Michael." The voice came from the back of the store. Steady. Firm. "Mr. Dempsey, the store manager." He stood at the edge of the showroom, arms crossed, his usually composed expression dark with something unreadable. The entire store seemed to hold its breath as he stepped forward, each polished shoe clicking against the floor like a slow drumroll of impending doom. "My office," he said simply. The blood drained from Michael's face. The walk to the manager's office had never felt so long. Each step dragged heavier than the last, his stomach tightening with every hushed whisper behind him. When he stepped inside, the heavy oak door swung shut with an ominous finality. Dempsey didn't sit. He stood near his desk, back straight, hands clasped in front of him, a portrait of restrained disappointment. Michael didn't dare speak first. "You know," Dempsey began, his voice controlled but edged with something cold, "when I hired you, I thought you understood the balance between exclusivity and respect. That you knew the difference between selling luxury and selling arrogance." Michael swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Sir, No," Dempsey cut him off, shaking his head. "You're going to listen." Michael stiffened, the sharp rebuke landing like a slap. "Today," Dempsey continued, stepping closer, "you humiliated a customer. You insulted someone who, whether you knew it or not, deserved the same level of respect as any other client that walks through those doors. And you did it not because she was rude, not because she mistreated you, but because you assumed she wasn't worth your time." Michael opened his mouth again, desperate to explain, but the look Dempsey gave him shut it down before the words could leave his lips. "It doesn't matter if she was Keanu Reeves' mother or an ordinary schoolteacher from Brooklyn. It doesn't matter if she was a billionaire or someone just window shopping for the first time. What matters," Dempsey's voice dropped lower, measured and sharp, "is that you treated her like she was beneath you. And that is something I cannot tolerate." A deep, sinking feeling settled in Michael's gut. Dempsey exhaled slowly, shaking his head. "Take the rest of the day off. We'll discuss your future with the company tomorrow." Michael's chest tightened, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "Sir, please." Dempsey's expression didn't waver. That wasn't a request. Michael knew then. He had lost. Back on the showroom floor, Jake continued to assist customers, his easy smile and genuine warmth standing in stark contrast to the scene that had just unfolded. The wealthy couple who had witnessed the entire ordeal approached him now, their demeanor thoughtful. "So," the man said, adjusting the cuff of his suit, "how long have you worked here?" Jake chuckled, placing a new velvet tray on the counter. "Long enough to know people are more important than price tags." The woman beside him smiled, her gaze drifting toward the door where Keanu and his mother had disappeared. "You know, after today, I think we'll be rethinking what truly matters." Jake nodded. "Yeah. I think a lot of people will." Outside, the city moved at its usual relentless pace. Horns blared, footsteps clicked against concrete, and the golden glow of the late afternoon sun cast long shadows on Fifth Avenue. But for Patricia and Keanu, the world felt quiet. Unbothered. Peaceful. Keanu adjusted the straps of the extra helmet before placing it gently on his mother's head, his movements careful, instinctive, an unspoken act of care forged through years of love and understanding. Patricia chuckled as he buckled the strap under her chin. "You know," she mused, "it's been a while since I've been on one of these things." Keanu grinned. Then we're overdue. She patted the side of his leather jacket. Just don't go too fast. I'm not 20 anymore. He laughed, throwing a leg over the bike before reaching back to make sure she was steady. Mom, you've never been afraid of a little speed. Patricia shook her head but held on as he revved the engine, the sound slicing through the hum of the street. As they pulled away, she glanced back at the store, at the elegant lettering above the door, at the faces still watching from inside. Michael was nowhere to be seen. The wind brushed against her skin as the city blurred past them, but she didn't need to look back again. The moment was over. A lesson had been learned, one that had nothing to do with money or status but everything to do with character. A few blocks down, Keanu slowed to a stop in front of a quiet little cafe tucked between towering buildings. The scent of fresh coffee and warm pastries drifted from inside, wrapping them in an immediate sense of comfort. Patricia removed her helmet, smoothing down her silver hair before smiling. Still remember my favorite spot, huh? Of course, Keanu said, climbing off the bike. And I already know you're getting the lemon scones. She laughed softly as they stepped inside, the bell above the door chiming a welcome. The cafe was small, intimate, the kind of place that didn't need extravagance to feel special. A waitress greeted them with a warm smile and led them to a corner table by the window. As they sat, Keanu leaned back, exhaling slowly. You know you made a scene back there. Patricia lifted an eyebrow. Me? He smirked. Yeah, you. She stirred her tea, her gaze drifting out the window to the busy street beyond. Well, she mused, sometimes people need a scene to wake up. Keanu nodded, his expression softening. Yeah. I think he did. Patricia took a slow sip of her tea, then set the cup down with a quiet clink. I just hope he learns from it. If he doesn't, Keanu said simply, the world will take care of it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of the afternoon finally settling. There was no anger, no lingering frustration, just the quiet, steady understanding that life had a way of balancing itself. Keanu reached for his coffee, his voice lighter now. But let's not talk about that guy anymore. Tell me about the costume designs you're working on. Patricia's eyes lit up instantly. Oh, now that's a much better conversation. And just like that, the world outside kept moving, but in their little corner of the cafe, nothing else mattered. Because sometimes, the most valuable things in life don't come in a velvet box or shine under showroom lights. Sometimes, they sit across from you at a small cafe, sipping tea, sharing laughter, and reminding you of what truly matters.